Questions and comments? Seeing none, the honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I address not only our fellow parliamentarians in this House of Commons, I wish to address our fellow Canadians of Tamil descent who gathered on the Hill here today, and in fact Tamil Canadians from across our great country who are watching this historic emergency debate. Our Tamil Canadian brothers and sisters, I feel tremendous empathy for you. You see, like many of you, I'm the child of political refugees to this country. Many of my parents and grandparents, family members, and loved ones were killed, often in the most brutal of ways in their struggle for a free and independent Ukraine. Freedom and independence are sought when continuing injustices take place. This has been the historic struggle of many peoples, many nations. In the past century, tens of millions of lives have been lost to ethnic intolerances, ethnic hatreds, ethnic cleansings, and genocides. And yet humanity seems not to learn from these tragic lessons. For decades now, Tamils in Sri Lanka have struggled with intolerance and injustice. In the resulting frustrating and horrific violence, tens of thousands of innocent Tamils, as well as Sinhalese and Muslims, have been killed. How many of the anguished Tamil Canadians who gathered here today before the Peace Tower have lost loved ones, lost friends? Just over a year ago, along with many of you, we mourned the assassination, the loss of Tamil Selvan. Tamil Selvan embodied Tamil aspirations. He was a soldier who became a peace negotiator. Despite having borne witness to decades of horror, he laid down his gun in the search for peace. His targeted assassination, the assassination of a peace negotiator by the Sri Lankan government, began a well-planned out descent into the horrors of war. At the time, I condemned the assassination, stated the following at the November 5, 2007 memorial for Tamil Selvan, and I quote, "Sri Lanka stands at the edge of a precipice with the potential to descend into a new hell. How many thousands more to be victimized to satiate the hatred in people's souls? How many more women and men, brothers and sisters, children are to be sacrificed on the altar of war?" Mr. Speaker, these were the words of warning I spoke over a year ago. Yet the Conservative government was deaf to these warnings, deaf to the pleadings and anguish of thousands of Tamil Canadians. A year ago, Tamil Sri Lanka's infants, children, men and women were on the precipice. In these last weeks, they've been pushed off the ledge and find themselves in the midst of the horror, in the midst of the hell of war. Meanwhile, our Prime Minister has been silent for over a year, and I note he hasn't been here for the debates this evening. Has he even taken the time to look at the picture?
The member is an experienced parliamentarian, and he knows that it's inappropriate to refer to members who are not here.
Thank you. Has he even taken the time to look at the pictures of the dead and dying civilians? Thousands of our Canadian brothers and sisters of Tamil ancestry, as well as all Canadians who believe in Canada's legacy of peacekeeping and patient diplomacy, call on our Prime Minister to help re-establish an international ceasefire, to actively engage our diplomats in Sri Lanka, the Commonwealth, and the UN to restart peace negotiations, and not to dedicate substantive resources and not a symbolic $3 million or the equivalent of $10 for each of the 300,000 herded, internally displaced refugees, so as to provide desperately needed medical and humanitarian aid. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I once again turn to our fellow Tamil Canadian brothers and sisters. Many of you have lost family members, have lost loved ones. In their honour, let us commit ourselves to putting an end to the anguished cries that have emanated from the island of Sri Lanka for decades, and imagine instead what today seems impossible, an island paradise of smiling peoples, of smiling children. Mr. Speaker, Canada can, Canada must play a role in bringing an end to the horrors of this war. Canada can, Canada must be at the forefront in bringing about the peace. Umko udaya tesam tukum makalekum amaiti uruvachatum.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member from Scarborough Agincourt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've been talking among ourselves, and we've heard from our constituents all this week, and certainly there's more people that want to voice their concern and speak to us. So I, for one, would love to hear from them, and you know, there's the lobby that they can certainly call. That number is 613-996-7441. I'd love to hear from them and make them part of this debate for the next hour and a half that we're going to be here. So I'm sure that my colleague will certainly want me to repeat this number, which is 613-996-7441. Call us. Tell us what you think. Speak to the ministers. Speak to the members of Parliament. Tell us what you think we should do.
The Honourable Member from Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, yes, of course, I would like to thank my honourable member, not just for his interjection, but for his continuous work for many years on this particular file. And I'd once again like to encourage all of our colleagues on the opposite benches, on the government benches, to take the time to speak with their constituents, to speak with the thousands of Tamil Canadians that they represent, so they understand the anguish, the horror of what's taking place in Sri Lanka. And I'm sure once they speak with Tamil Canadians about the current situation, they'll find it within their hearts to speak with the Prime Minister, with their colleague, to convince him that we must do more, that we must engage our diplomats, have them engage their colleagues in the Commonwealth, at the UN, and that we must do more than the $3 million that were announced today. Thank you.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member from Burnaby, New Westminster.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member from Etobicoke North.
Etobicoke Centre.
Etobicoke Centre, pardon me.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the honourable member from Parkdale High Park. It seems inconceivable, incomprehensible that up to this point the Prime Minister has, as of yet, not called in the High Commissioner for Sri Lanka to explain to him in the sternest language that what is taking place is unacceptable. It seems incomprehensible that the Minister for Foreign Affairs hasn't called his counterparts in the Commonwealth. It's incomprehensible that the Prime Minister hasn't instructed his diplomats at the UN to raise this issue. And I'd like to put the question to the honourable member through you. Is there any explanation as to why this government has been silent and continues to be silent on this file?
The Honourable Member from Parkdale High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you, thank you to the member for Etobicoke Centre for the question. You know, I think the easy answer is there is no real good explanation, but I think we also want to reflect a little bit. If we want a better standard for the House, why is it easy for a government not to respond on April the 23rd when the member for Toronto Centre stood up in this House and said we have an incipient emergency, April 23rd of last year? How is that possible? Because it is possible to arm's length ourselves, not just that government and that Prime Minister, but ourselves from a humanitarian crisis by some of the excuses we've been using. You just need to invoke the word of terrorism and it gives you a shield, and it's wrong. And it's a failure on our part. And I say, and I invite the members opposite, as we have invited them on economic conditions and on other things, to adopt and to look for a Canadian standard. When you're the government, it is not an exercise in our personal ideologies. It is an exercise in developing where Canada is going to go. And by putting that shield around it, we make it harder, Mr. Speaker, to actually reckon with those realities, and we have become less Canadian as a result.
Resuming debate, the honourable member from Scarborough Rouge River.